possible time possible to our presenter, we'd like to go ahead and just get started and give our time to Ms. Paula Miller.
Good afternoon, I have people. I'm so excited. I'm like, this is just going to be goofy if I'm talking to myself. Wow.
Could you like move closer to the...
No, I don't want to be on film. Can you just show the slides?
No, we want you to.
You can come closer then.
Okay, yeah, I know. I'm like really quiet.
Always.
Just be in line of sight.
Okay, so my name is Paula Miller, and I work at UT Austin in an independent center inside of the College of Ed. We're completely grant funded, and we get to do really fun things like build things for the state of Texas and all of its students for free. So it's a pretty cool job. So why in the world did we need it? Texas is like a country, okay? We're huge. This is how many students we have, 4.9 million, and we grow by about 300,000 annually. It's a lot of kids, right? So here's the other thing that's like really important in our state. Over half of our kids are Hispanic, many of which are second language learners. So what we do has to be done not only in English, but also in Spanish, and there has to be some accessibility for students that are second language learners. We have a lot of teachers all over the place. A lot of people think, oh, Texas is big. Well, can't you just get on your horse and like ride around? No, you can drive for like 12 hours and not be across the state. It's really, really big. 8,500 campuses across the state, 325,000 teachers. In our state, we've got money. Okay, I talked with a lot of my other friends that were Department of Ed people across the country. No money right now. Texas has money, and they invest heavily in education. But what's happened over the years is they've gotten all of these things developed, but they don't have a home for them. So we have the advent of this, Project Share Texas. Have any of you even heard of this initiative? Well, Garen, it doesn't count. You're from UT. So Project Share was the initial brainchild of Anita Gibbons, who was a commissioner at the Texas Education Agency. She said, well, what if, and she just started talking out loud to our commissioner of ed at the time, Robert Scott, and she said, what if we design this portal, an LMS of sorts, that we can make available to every single teacher, every single student in the state of Texas for free? Wouldn't that be cool? Well, she got the support of the commissioner, and Project Share Texas was born. The great thing about it is we had a place, a repository to put all of the content. But how many of you are familiar with building an LMS platforms? Everybody here, right? It can be a total pain, right? Yeah, and in fact, let me just hit to the next slide. The first thing everyone asks is, oh, so you're building in X. No, this is one no one has ever heard of, or very few people have heard of. Their kind of niche, or their claim to fame, is they say we're like social media along with an LMS. What they really have is a very limited LMS that they're kind of building as they go. So Texas pretty much doubled the number of users in their system when we came on. So we started with the notion of, let's start with professional development, make professional development that is created by the state of Texas available in this platform for everyone. Great. So how many of you are motivated by professional development? Okay, we aren't either, all right? So the agency said, well, let's create tools for students, and that's where we came in. So we created On Track for College Readiness. And you might be thinking, oh, what in the world could they do that would be engaging for kids, especially kids who for whatever reason are just not getting the content? Well, so what we decided to do was just-in-time learning kinds of things. How many of you have heard the spiel of, oh, build it, they will come? Yeah, they don't, especially if the LMS is like really tough for them to get into, right? Imagine trying to get to the state of Texas. I gave you the data with the number of users. Imagine trying to get all of them usernames and passwords. Fun, right? And we have arms across the state that are regional service centers, that is their job. Their job is to help the State Department of Ed get information out. They are the decentralizers of information for the state, which is really great. Well, here's the deal. We had to think through, and this was tough. If you've ever done something that's really different, trying to create a vision without clear things of what it looks like is really, really complex. We brought some of the best writers in the state in. And we said, all right, here's what we want to do. We want you to go out and we want you to find all of this open source material, curate it with information around it so that it makes sense for students and they can use the content, but it has to look different than what the traditional teaching in the classroom looks like. Some of them, first option, oh my gosh, it was horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. They created lessons that looked like a lesson plan. How many of you had the same experience? Own it. It's like, oh my gosh, no, no. So we had to go back to the drawing board and say, no, here is the exemplar. Here's what we're trying to shoot for. And it had to be engaging learning. It had to draw the learner in so that they could access the content in ways that it wasn't just lecture, talk to me, teach me, teach me. And without the help of the teacher, we couldn't assume that they were going to have help as they were working through the materials. And they had to activate lots of knowledge using video, interactives, and that kind of thing, which for math and science, tons of things out there. And what we found in the social studies area, great, great tools through the Library of Congress as well. So here's usage data, just looking at the LMS platform. Already 3 million users, not bad. Our courses, as of June of last year before summer school started, 84,000 students, 32,000 teachers using it. What we found is a lot of teachers, instead of importing students in, they just use whole class models or small class models with students. So let's talk about the gateway and why the gateway was needed. TEA said, well, this is great, but we still have people like Houston ISD. Houston ISD has over 100,000 students. Northside ISD, I think, is sitting at about 80,000 students right now. Neither one of them wanted to play because it was too hard to get all their teachers and their students into the platform. So as of just September through October, here's what we have in terms of our data. Lots of visitors, lots of people doing things. What we're finding is Houston does not play in the LMS, but they're coming to the gateway. The gateway is basically materials that were built in the LMS, taken from the LMS to this gateway, which I'm going to demonstrate in just a minute. But lots of them accessing on mobile devices. That's really not as high as I thought it would be. When you hear some of the folks like out of South Africa, they're like, oh, 30% or so. It's not that high for us. So this is the gateway, and I encourage you to go there, projectsharetexas.org. Many of you have devices, and we're actually going to look at a couple of things in just a second. From the landing page, they can actually enter the LMS so they have full access to all of the lessons that are available to them. What we've done is we created a way that they could search by subject. The only two that are live right now are mathematics and science. And if you're looking for specific grade level content, you're only going to find grade 8 and above, primarily right now, within those two areas. So the next thing that we decided that we needed to do is teach kids content from the perspective of another kid. The reason that we felt that this was really an important kind of thing to do is, how many of you have a background as a teacher? You remember those concepts that you were trying to teach and you were up there and you were having a great day and you went through the whole lesson, and then you ask the kids a question and it's like blank stare. Like nothing went past. And then you ask a kid to get up, well, explain, what this means from your perspective, and this kid puts something in their terms and then the whole class understands. Have you had that experience before? It's pretty amazing, pretty cool. And it took us a year, but we were able to get a Creative Commons license on all of these. The reason these have become so popular in iTunes U and in the Gateway and in the courses is we've developed them in both English and in Spanish, many of the lessons. They range in length between about 5 minutes and 7 minutes, so it's really accessible. They play well on players. And we'll actually look at this example in just a second. The other thing that we did, and we put in the Gateway, lots and lots of interactives. And I'm going to have to go back here for this one. And I know this is just a wonky kind of setup, so sorry. And I'm asthmatic, so talking really fast doesn't work for me. Gosh, and now I've got this set up where I can't even get out of it. Help! There we go. Just trying to get out of this screen.
Use 4 fingers and swipe sideways.
4 fingers and swipe sideways. I don't know that trick. Oh, very good. Okay. So what I would like to do first is actually just play one of our videos. This one is a chemistry video, and you know chemistry is a butt kicker for most kids. Anybody remember the Bohr model? Woo! Exciting.
Hello. Hello, Earth to students. This is Callum, and now is not the time to zone out. I just got a text from Joey from Laredo. He wants to know how Bohr's model of the atom is like the solar system. Well, Joey, since 400 BC, starting with that dude Aristotle, scientists have tried to learn what matter is made of. I'm sure by now you've heard of Dalton, Thomson, Chadwick, and Rutherford. These guys did a pretty good job in figuring out what's inside an atom. Protons, neutrons, and electrons, duh. Up to this point, scientists have also figured out charges and sizes of subatomic particles. And that's good too. But even after Rutherford's gold foil experiment in 1911, there still wasn't a good model of an atom's chemical and physical properties. In comes Niels Bohr to shake things up. He and Einstein were like BFFs. Anyway, so Rutherford's model focused on the nucleus. Bohr turned...
So you get the idea of these things. Lots of graphics within the videos, lots of examples, lots of times where they basically break the content down into parts that are more usable for kids. The first ones that we produced, they looked like we produced them out of a garage, because we kind of did. You know, Austin has studios, so we just rented one. Got a cameraman in there, and we just went for it. And we were like, okay, these are not the best. You know how it's an iterative process as you design things. So we've gotten a lot better. This is actually in the last development cycle. Right now, I think we've developed right at 200 videos. So we've gotten a lot better at it. We figured out who do you get for actors? How do you get these things trans-adapted into Spanish so they make sense for the kids? Because it's not a Google translation that's going to work. Hopefully all of you know that. So these things are all available in iTunes U. If you look for On Track for College Readiness or Kid to Kid video, you'll see them there. I'm retarded when it comes to my computer. I know. Yeah, no. Okay. So then the other thing that we decided we needed to do was create a bunch of interactives. And we figured out, you know, the best way to do this would be to actually create some things. Of course, I'm not going to do that one there. Hold on. Create some things that could be templatized. What are you doing? Here it is. So there are lots of things like this. So you've got the introduction of the content, but then they actually have mechanisms of feedback. So there's formative types of feedback for them as well as summative built in. But there's lots of these low-risk kinds of things where, all right, build a portrait of a leader that you're interested in. I want to do this to us. Let's see. Now what do I want? What kind of trait at the left should he have other than the recognition of talent? Ooh, I want him to be fierce and ruthless. But then I also want him to have eloquence and be able to talk to people. So then it basically goes through, well, you've picked a leader who could do X, Y, and Z. So these are the kinds of things that we've done. Smaller learning objects that we build things around, that it gives kids a chance to play. If you're familiar with Jane McGonigal's work, what she said is kids need to fail like 80% of the time to understand content. So we've taken that notion and put these little small learning objects and ways for them to interact in the content into our courses and into the gateway so that they can just start and look at some of these things without feeling like, you know, they're going to have an F if they fail at them. And I'll show you one other one really quickly. This is one that we're kind of proud of and we really like simply because it has a lot of content displayed. But there's lots of things that a teacher or a student can do with this timeline of figures. these different eras in U.S. history, and they can look at the significant political and historical figures within each of those areas and learn more about them. So for example, if they were looking at colonization, here are the folks that within our state standards are the most important. If they want to learn about, say for example, Thomas Hooker, they can just click on him. And I don't know if it's the display or what's going on with this. I think it may have to be actually on a dot. There we go. So Samuel Adams, for example, essential facts about him. And what we try to do is put interesting things, not just the kinds of things that you would find in textbooks, but something that was kind of like, oh, you just need to know this interesting life fact about this particular historical figure. And they can just close it out. But this timeline is available throughout the learning materials for the kids. The other thing that can be done, and of course, I'll have to figure out how I can get to it. So you can look at it by era, or you can look at it by topic, and it breaks them down a little bit differently. So if it's an economic or social factor, here's the guys that you need to pay attention to. Here are the political guys throughout history that you need to pay attention to, and guys that are known particularly for their military, the kinds of things they did throughout history with the military. So lots of information that's available here for students as well. So I'd like for y'all now to go into Project Share Texas. And there are two particular things that I just want y'all to look at. You all have devices, correct? If you'll go in and just pull up this standard, you'll need to look under science, biology. The standard is B6F. Just poke around those two. There are two actual artifacts there that you can look at. And then if you have the time, go into grade 8, 8.11b. And that'll just give you a taste for the kinds of materials that are here. There's lots of things that are in the Gateway that just have not been published. If you're familiar with working with departments of ed, it takes a while. They want to approve everything. Even though we've got a lot of things already approved on the lesson side of this, to get approval on the Gateway side of things is this whole other set of approvals, which is kind of crazy, but that's how it is. And you'll see YouTube kinds of things. You'll see things that you'll find in other open source areas. We try to maximize the investment of the National Science Foundation. We've used things from the PhET site. Anywhere there's really good interactive content, we have pulled materials. All right, I know I haven't given you much time, and we're at the end. Any questions? Ways to make it better?
Do you share this content with other states?
So, in terms of the interactives, in terms anyone can hit this site. In terms of putting it on your site, we don't have clearance for that yet. All of the videos are going to live in iTunes U, and that's really the fastest way to get to them. And I know you can download them. It is the most restrictive. In order to do the Creative Commons licensing, their lawyers wanted the most restrictive, so it is the no derivatives, no commercial use kind of thing.
But you can link to it, look
Sure.
through the repository. Or
Yeah, and we want these things used. I mean, that's the whole thing when you get your blood, sweat, and tears to creating things like this. You want them accessed. And right now, it's the top hit in Texas education on iTunes U, so they are being accessed. And as we add more content in Spanish, and we have more students that are second language learners in Spanish. They'll have even more usage of them. Thank you for staying.
Another question.
Already in. I was
Another-
just curious how much prior work you, because, I mean, like California, there's brokers of expertise, which is, I would say, probably a more mature site, but
Mhm.
probably available and does largely the same thing, or other platforms. And I guess, is there, was there some prior effort to sort of figure out the lay of the land and the opportunities to build other things, or is there a political reason why you really can't do that anyway? Or, you know, just how much of this is?
Well, okay, we don't play in Common Core,
Mhm.
and we don't care, okay? And our governor will tell you that. So Texas is just kind of like, well, we're going to do it, we're going to do it ourselves. And then it takes us longer because we can't just build off of the work that other folks have done. And you're right, there's a lot of folks that have done significant projects that we could have said, oh, you know, make it look like this. But just to move things from the LMS over to this gateway, and you all know the sales pitch you get, and I was in the room when this group stood up and said, oh, we've got redundant servers, we've got this, we've got that. Even just putting Algebra 1 up, we crashed their servers. So, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you deal with when you've got, you know, vendors, or they all make promises to you. You know, I think folks at the agency thought that this was going to be a cheap thing to do. It really hasn't been that cheap of a thing, but we spend $350 million a year on textbooks. So if we can get something like this going, and it's so awesome because my team does things statewide. Not only do we build the online stuff, but we have people in the field that support grant implementation. And so we have folks, we were asked by the agency to go and ask people what they're using for intervention. All of them, every single district we work with, On Track was one of them. So the implementation's there. You know, we're going to see things continue to grow. And I hope we are able to get better and better and better at what we do. So if you have a way to contribute or you would like to share ideas, please contact me. Thank you for spending your afternoon with me.